Welcome, Jedi. No matter what kind of Jedi you are, I think this is going to be an episode that you find interesting, enlightening, and possibly helpful overall for you on your path, and for maybe even the larger Jedi community. That's right, this one's going to hit on the larger community, and it is about why Jedi Pathworking is important to the growth of the community overall. We've went into quite a bit why pathworking is good for you and some of the things you can do to start into pathworking more, things you can do to improve yourself. Now, ultimately, it does come down to training. It comes down to bettering yourself, meditation, martial arts, force work of some form, philosophy, introspection. Part of those are in the meditation aspect, those last two, but we have to make them separate because a lot of people meditate to clear out, and a lot of people don't understand meditation as an introspective practice. You have to have both. You actually have so many types of meditation you have to do as a Jedi. There's a reason why we old-timers tend to say meditate, meditate, meditate. It's not just that you need to meditate in one area or the other. We'll have an episode, I think, on that in the future, all the types of meditation. But why is all this important to the community? Well, we've had a slowdown of new members. And when I say new members, I don't mean necessarily in the group that I run or the groups I'm a part of. You know, those groups are very small, very isolated. I mean overall in the larger Jedi community we have watched over the past 5 or 10 years as it went from a rushing river to a trickle to almost nothing. Now, why is that? Well, some of that is the environment has shifted. It's no longer welcoming to people who were inspired by the Jedi as something more than just a religious aspect, we'll say. And when I say religious aspect in this, I'm going to draw a line between those who are practicing the religion and those who are religious as in paying lip service to. In the same way that you have people that are devout Christians that are Christian, and then you have people that go to church on Sunday and make sure, to ask for forgiveness for their mistresses and themselves and their, 37 kids that their wife doesn't know about. That's the difference I want to draw there, is the difference between being religious and a practitioner of the religion. So we see a lot of that, that's what we have available, that and the philosophy, but we don't have anything of the path. And most people that come to this, they're either looking for the path as a whole. They want to be a Jedi. They want to mimic what they've seen. And that can be good and that can be bad, but it's either that or they want the religious aspect. Some may come for the philosophy. Some may see it as a self-help path. But by and large, most people showing up want to know how to use the Force. They want to know how to fight, how to defend themselves and defend others. They want a deeper spiritual connection to the world around themselves that comes through that type of training. Belief doesn't just do it. It's more than just believing, and it's more than just faith. But they do want faith, and they often want something that is not as stern as their previous religion, perhaps, especially if they're coming from an Abrahamic one. But likely they still have a lot of that in them. So when they show up, they get one of two real options. They either get death by essay, they get sent somewhere where they're told this path is writing, a lot of writing. And this is what you're going to do, is a lot of writing. And the exploration is either only on the philosophical, or primarily on the philosophical, or on the religious. And when it's on the religious, it's not often on the religion that we see in the novels, in the mythologies, be it legendary, as we speak of here, or be it, the modern interpretation. We'll call it canon, I suppose. When you have it to where that is not being focused on at all, a lot of people show up, dip their toe in, and leave. And when I say we're not seeing a lot of new membership, we see people come in, they join, and then they forget. We have some groups that have thousands of members and maybe 10, 20 active at most. We have others that have 20 members or 30 members and they have 5 or 10 active. So percentage-wise, the smaller groups have more active membership than the larger ones by a wide margin. Now that's skewing numbers, to be fair. That's skewing numbers, but it's to prove a point. People show up and join and then leave. They may not leave physically, they may not hit the button to leave, but they show up and they leave. And it's because we're not giving them anything. There's nothing there for them. There's the philosophy, but unless they've got the rest of it, for most people the philosophy is shallow. Unless you have power, you don't really need to worry about how you're using power. And most of these people showing up don't have power in their lives already. So the philosophy, which is built to keep someone who has a massive reserve of ability to do things, be it through martial, being able to strike someone, or be it through mystical, the ability to manipulate the person's life, this entire philosophy is there to keep some of that in check and to help you be a better person. And yet it helps you be a better person beyond that. But for the people that are seeking the path, they're showing up, they're getting nothing. And for the people that are seeking the religious, 9 out of 10 times, and this is not picking on any one group, because most of the religious groups have a kind of spread out training method, meaning that it's up to the individual teachers how they teach. But as a result, they often focus on world religions. So what you have is now you have a universalism, which is fine, but that's not what they came looking for. So they're saying, show me the way, show me the Jedi religion, show me the Jedi path, and the community has nothing for them. It gives them nothing they've come seeking. Nothing. Nothing at all. It's ultimately self-satisfying to the people that have already come before, went through this, and found something from either the universalism or the philosophy. That is the bigger part of the community. Right now we have no active training orders for the path itself. We have orders that are working on things, but this is why we, Pathworkers, those who are in the path working, need to do videos, need to write posts, need to be present in a positive way, and you will get hate. You will get hate for that. I assure you, you will. But it's essential because the next person coming in is being told that the Force isn't real, or it may not be real. That it's whatever they believe. They're being told that the martial isn't necessary, even though that may be an inspiration for them. And they're being told it in a way that it says it is not part of it at all. They see any posts on martial arts, there's going to be a comment that says, not all Jedi do martial arts, which is another way of saying it's not important. If it's important to you, that's still not important. The path. That's outside of being a Jedi. That's not important to being a Jedi. It's not part of being a Jedi. So effectively, if you're a path worker, if they're coming in to seek path working, they're going to get bombarded by this. They're going to get bombarded by a smorgasbord of other religious choices if they're seeking the religious side of it with a minor focus on the path working. They may be happy to do some Qigong and a little bit of meditation and call it a day, and then have the religious aspect of what the Force is, what it means as an ever-flowing present thing that guides and moves, and yet doesn't judge, doesn't sit there in judgment or harshness. They may be seeking that, and they don't have a lot of access to that because there is a push on complete and total acceptance, and anytime you say, well, this is the way, you better say for me, and you better write a 30-page essay explaining that you're not trying to tell anyone what to do, just as I have to do in these videos so frequently. This is a problem. This means that new members coming in don't have anything of value to them, so they leave. They don't become activists. Why we don't see new names as often, and when we see new names, they're fly by night. They last a week or two and then they go away. It's why what is left of the Jedi community is people that have been here at least 5+ years for the most part, being active and talking to each other. It's why the pathworking groups, it's why the different groups that focus on pathworking, not just the one I run, but other ones, run into a situation where it's all a bunch of people who've been here for 5+ years. And it's why we don't see any activity among new people, only 5+ year ones, because when a new person comes in, if they say, I want to focus on these things, they're put down, they're beat down very quickly, in a polite way. It's a polite beat down. Yes, so we're going to be very polite while we beat you, kind of deal. Very politically correct beatdown. But it's still a beatdown, which means we have to be resilient, because this is a war for the soul of the Jedi to continue. And what I mean by that, when I say that, eventually, no new people will show up. So the religious side will go away. The idea that the Force exists, that it's real, that you can tap into it, that it guides on some innate level, that it is bigger than what we can put into words, which is why it is the Force. That it's not some dude in a toga trying to smack you upside the head with a stick. That'll go away. And this will just become universalism without even the rest of it. Because eventually the code will get wiped out. Many places don't even use the Jedi code directly anymore. Eventually the rest of the philosophy will be turned towards whatever the person in charge wants it to be. That's a kind of evolution, I guess. And in that evolution, we lose the soul, the heart. We lose the core of what was Jedi. We lose the core of what is inspiring people to show up to be Jedi. And once they lose that, what we've done is we've failed them as they walk through the door. So what this means then, we're not at a war with anyone else. Let me make that clear. When I say we're in a war for the soul of the Jedi, you're not at war with anyone else. You're at war with the situation. You're at war with what is going on. And that doesn't mean the people. They're doing what they feel is right, often based on what they've been through in their life experiences. You have one person have one crappy sensei who on day one is like, everybody's gonna spar, white belts line up your mind. You know, that ruins a person's view of the martial. You have one person who goes through all the way to black belt as a martial artist, and they get no spiritual experiences from it, and they're not shown any paths, and they don't know how to look for them, and they're told, no, that works, it's just hit this, do this. That robs them of something. Worse yet, if they go through and they have these practices, but they're not taught completely, and then the practices fail them, be they spiritual or physical, because the teaching was not good enough, or the practical application was glanced over. The Force is vast, and many of us have seen it do many amazing things. I've seen electronics get shorted out. I myself have managed to heal parts of my body that shouldn't be able to heal in the way that they are, and I've seen it have limits. And we focus on those limits so much because we're afraid of someone jumping off a cliff. We're afraid of someone lighting themselves on fire. Or we're afraid of them becoming delusional because they move from thinking they can control a candle flame to trying to control a burning building. And in that over safety, we run into the same problem that martial arts does when you sanitize it and make it too safe as well. It stops working. If you take karate, boxing, taekwondo, anything, and you limit it down to a very strict rule set, hit here, wear super thick gloves, no biting, no kicking, nothing else, then it starts to fail when it's applied physically. It starts to fail when it makes its way to the street. And once it fails them once in a spar, once it fails them in an immediate situation where they need the Force, and they don't know how to tap into the guidance because no one's ever taught them. They don't know how to do anything in the energy healing side except visualize a big sphere and make it go. Well, that's probably not going to heal someone from a near-death situation. And if they haven't learned to tap into the guidance, they haven't found the calm, they haven't found the infinite within the limited as well, then they're going to get let down by that, and then they're going to leave. I have watched a Jedi Knight repair the discs in his back. And I've also watched many of us fail, myself included, to overcome long-term injuries. I have seen the Force strengthen someone to a point where they are beyond imaginably powerful in that moment, and I've seen it not be enough to let someone get out the way of a punch or a sword. we have to remember when we are making this safer, as it were, and reminding people, yeah, don't go jump off a cliff and you're not bulletproof, that it's also infinite and vast, and that's part of the pathworking. Without that, new people show up, there's nothing for them. The philosophy it's important, but it's the smallest aspect, and most of what we have isn't Jedi. At least not when you look at the source materials, not when you look at the mythology. It's someone else's advancement of a very bare bones set that only really applies if you're wielding power. So we don't give them any road to power. We don't give them any road to self-betterment. We don't give them any road to be the thing that inspired them. But we expect them to stick around and write a book for our benefit because we learned through writing essays. We learned through introspection. But we can't even guarantee that they're being introspective during it. Right now, anyone with a moderate level of intelligence can come through, pretend to be whoever, and go through an entire Jedi training program and be knighted without any real proof or evidence of who they are, or that they really know it outside of a collection of essays. Now, every group is fighting that actively. They have their own methods to try and ensure that doesn't happen, but we've seen a lot of people turn really bad. We've seen a lot of people turn really nasty, we'll say, after they get their knighthoods or after they get recognition or whatever. That's a thing too, and it shows that that system is not perfect. I'm not criticizing the system. I'm telling you that under normal circumstances, when the pathworking hadn't been shunned so much that every single pathworker is afraid to post now. Every single pathworker is afraid to talk about the path because they're tired of having to fight tooth and nail to make a statement without a contradictory one being entered. Before, in the past, this was offset heavily by the fact that the openness of the community was universal. You wouldn't tell someone that martial arts wasn't part of the path. If you said, not all Jedi, you would then amend that with, but certainly for those that it has value, this is a good resource. Or this is a direction you can go. It was a politeness. You went a step further. A lot can be said with what is not said. And honestly, if the Jedi Pathworkers, those who are working the path, those that are walking it, are not vocal and visible, over time, there will be nothing the community offers a new Jedi. Oh, you'll have people that'll come through and they'll get the recognition and they'll go, I'm a knight, after, 6 months or a year. Eventually, it'll be a situation where they can't push it anymore for the writing because people just won't do it. Or eventually, it'll be too much work because the goal is the cookie, the title, for a lot of people at that point because they're not being given anything else. Imagine being a weightlifter who can't increase the amount of weight you lift. Being a runner who can't run any faster. But you're told to write essays about running. Write essays about weightlifting. Eventually, someone has to give you something to make you want to get there because you don't have anything else. So they give you a title. You're now a grand weightlifter. A fast runner. You may not actually be a fast runner or a grand weightlifter, but you've been told you are. You've been told that you can get that title. What happens when the essays stop? Most people who are knighted don't teach. Most people who go through a program don't honestly develop and change. Not that much. They jump through the hoops. They get the pat on the back, and that's why we also see so many people going ballistically cruel on each other. I'm of the mind that for all of this to work, for the Jedi community to survive, it has to have its separate factions. We need the Pathworkers because they're giving the new people what they want. Maybe after they get that, they realize that that wasn't what they wanted, to be a Jedi in that way, so they become religious. They focus on the Force. Or maybe after that, they become religious and then they go to a different religion. That's the other thing with teaching the religious side as eclecticism, universalism. When you teach it as universalism, why stay Jedi? What are you giving them that's more? They are better served by a congregation and larger community somewhere else. But with the Pathworkers, we give them something that when they come in, if our presence is there, and if we're accepted, if we're not having to fight at every turn, which we're going to have to for right now. That's just a truth. But when we're there, and our view is there, they realize there's other ways they can go. We give them resources. We point them in the directions of books that will help them. Things like the Celestine Prophecy. Things like Qigong manuals or videos on the subject. Things like videos on various classical meditations that fit within the Jedi path. We give them videos on different martial arts that they can start to look into. And then often we'll even have older, more experienced members start looking around to vet different dojos to see if they're of high quality, to see if there's somewhere they can get into a dojo. Or if not a dojo, maybe a gym, maybe a sword fighting group. You know, there's a lot of sword fighting groups out there now. There's a lot of opportunities to grow and use that as your martial outlet, to connect to the Force in a flowing, physical way in which you do get an immediate feedback from someone else as to how well you're making that connection. So it's not just up here. It's in here too. It's in here. It's in here. That is something that Pathworkers do. And our presence allows that growth. The most important thing at this point, I would say, to ensure that everyone has that opportunity to be Jedi. So number one, we have to recognize that the divisions are there and accept them as a non-universal banner. What I mean by that is, just as Christianity has Catholicism and like 100 different forms of Protestants, in the forms of Baptists, in the forms of Jehovah's Witnesses, in the forms of Mormonism, that one is a little shaky in some people's estimate, but I'm going to put it in there. In the same way that I don't take away the name Jedi from any group when I'm talking. If we're going to ensure that this continues on, we have to learn to respect each other in their right to use the word, right to use the name. However, your standard for what a Jedi is should not be something you are compelled to give someone that title. Because when you do, then anybody can start a group up, no matter how cruel or mean they are, and they're a Jedi. Doesn't matter if they have complete disrespect for everything else and everyone else. They're a Jedi because they said they're so and they've got a group behind them. We cannot allow that to become the default either. The default should be that each individual determines what they see Jedi as. And each group sets their standard for what a Jedi is. And these overarching terms are more the same way shamanism isn't really an accurate single term for a single practice. There are many ways to be Jedi Pathworkers. I go with the legendary method, as I call it, but I'm sure others go with the old Republic method, or the new canon method, we'll call it. I'm sure that others focus on it with a hybridization. And there are many ways to be Pathworkers even outside of that. You could throw the fiction out, but require that everything have a point of reference back to it. you could use other points of philosophy. Now, would I call that a Pathworker direct? No, and I shouldn't. But what I can say is that whatever it becomes after that, whatever I would choose to call it, I should choose something with respect. I would call that I don't know what I would call that at that point. Maybe more of a universalist Pathworker. And that's fine. So that they are drawing on all of these other things, but they recognize that the path is still in the mythos. You should check it against it, but you should teach off of other things. That's fine. That would be a universalist Pathworker. We have different branches of religionists. We have universalist religionists, and then we have forcist religionists. We have different kinds of realists. We have realists that focus more on the philosophy, Jedi philosophers, and then we have those that focus more on self-help. And then we have those that focus more on rendering aid to others. When you start to have respect for all of these different things, when you start to approach it from a respectful point of view for all sides, you recognize that without the Pathworkers, something is lost. Membership continues to dwindle. People aren't getting what they want. A lot of people show up every year wanting to be a Jedi, like they've seen. Recently, a new TV series released. I'm not going to name it, that way this video will be timeless. And many, many people will show up wanting to be their favorite hero or heroine from that TV series or that movie. Wanting to mimic them. They are going to want to know how to use the Force. Which means that lessons on things like telekinesis, while it is a very minor skill, trains larger skills and should be there. It means lessons on Force influence, how to calm an area, how to use the Force to strengthen your body, how to extend your senses better, will become very important to them. Yeah, we should be careful to tell people that while the Force is limitless, we are limited. That's actually in one of the Legends books. I don't remember which one, but Mara Jade said it. She said, while the Force is limitless and infinite, I know that I am not. That is important, but that should never overshadow the rest of it. Yeah, there are limits to what martial arts will do. I would not recommend seeking fights just because you have martial training or self-defense training. I would not recommend seeking fights with significantly armed people for sure, or even slightly armed. In fact, I wouldn't recommend seeking fights at all. But it will do some things if it's taught properly and learned properly. A lot of people who won't make it to the end of this video are going to feel insulted. I stopped listening in the first 5 minutes. And that's fine. But if you made it this far, you realize I'm not aiming at anyone. Now, with all of that, this is on our shoulders too, Pathworkers. Those of us who are Pathworkers, those of us walking the path, those of us who believe that all of it is necessary, we get downtrodden, we get disheartened, we have our own issues with it. We are in a world where we are the least respected and most hated of all the Jedi. Yes, even that guy. The one who did all the stuff you heard about. The one who did all the stuff you haven't heard about. That's a rough place to be. We're less popular than the worst. But it's not about being popular. It's about continuing to be there, present, making sure our message is there, and when new people show up, ensuring that they know that, yeah, not all Jedi do martial arts, but you can. And if you feel the call, you should. That you should if you feel the call. And if someone says, well, you can't say that, argue with them. Fight them on it. Now, mind you, that means that since most of the people that say that the most are in positions of power, the message will get limited. But eventually, if that message is there somewhere, people will go to those places. Eventually, people will keep showing up and leaving. If the Pathworkers are not there, if the idea of a Jedi is something you can be, not just something you can mimic, Not just something you can pretend to be, but you can actually live it as a part of your life, day in and day out. You can dedicate yourself to the Force, to training, to self-betterment, to being more than you were the day before and helping others through that. Eventually, if that's not here, every person showing up for it has nothing that you're offering them. Nothing that we are offering them. And if we, as Pathworkers, are silent, we have committed to that, to the downfall of a really wonderful and expressive community. A community filled with diverse and interesting people from all walks of life and from various points of view. The Jedi community falls. We could say it's the fault of the people that said, well, I don't want to hear about your mysticism. Or we could say it was our fault for letting them make that decision and silencing ourselves rather than just continuing on. I say this, if you haven't been blocked or banned, if you haven't been knocked out of a place and you have the message and you're putting it out there, keep at it. If they block you and ban you, eventually that too has an impact. Eventually it becomes the death knell of communities. We're at a critical point in what it means to be a Jedi. We either go forward from here, we make sure that there is a place for those that find the value in the religion, in the philosophy, and in the realist ideal. But we also make sure there's a place for those that find something in the whole path, the complete path, as Pathworkers. We make sure there's a place for the mystics and the martial artists. We make sure that there's a place for the warriors and the sages, for the guardians and for the deep thinkers. Or we watch this become somewhere when people show up and go, I want to be a Jedi. The answer that they're given, the real answer that they're given, is no, you don't. No, you don't. You're wrong. How dare you want to be a Jedi? What you want to be is this variation of the philosophy that we have created. How dare you want to be that? You're wrong. You're delusional. Or we say to them, no, you don't. It's not really a religion you can partake in. You need to go find God or Jesus or some other idea. Maybe you need to find a pantheon. Maybe you need to find some Wiccan group to join. But Jedi isn't what you're seeking. That's a heck of a statement to make. But if we are silent and we do not show that this is a whole complete path, that it's not just punching people in the nose, but it's also not writing, 1,000 pages of text to prove to someone else that you know how to write really well or you know how to make an AI hide it. If we don't prove to them it's more, if we don't show them it's more, they have every reason to leave. They have every reason to go somewhere else and find something else. And that means eventually there will be no Jedi community. There will be no path. At least not with an online home and not with an online presence. If you're made it this far and you're one of those people at the top somewhere, one of the high muckety mucks, and you go, I feel like I was called out. I called myself out too, so that you remember I'm not doing enough. No one is. I've been told that I am one of the better of the old guard because I am more willing to listen and more willing to understand and agree to disagree. But I would like to think that I'm going beyond that. I encourage these differences. But I also encourage you, every single one of you. Yes, you. Yep, you too. To decide what Jedi is for yourself and not let anyone sway you on that. Don't let anyone badger you into your ideals. And if you see someone who's acting not as a Jedi in your view, and that includes if you don't see me as one, don't call us one. look, I know there's at least one or two people out there who go, that man is not a Jedi. And I accept that. I accept that they don't see me as one. I accept that where they're coming from in their view, I cannot be one to them. But I will not give up the path, nor will I give up the way. Nor will I give up making sure that others have the opportunity to find it. And neither should you. Now, why do I hold to that so stringently? Stringently? I think that's a word. When you let other people decide what a Jedi is, every terrible action is permissible, so long as you can give a good enough excuse or write a long enough essay about why you did it. So long as you're well-worded or eloquent, or so long as you can get a following and a group behind you, you can do anything. And we've seen it in the past. Many groups exist and are not called out for their existence, despite terrible evils done, because we are accepting, and no one can decide what a Jedi is. It's in your heart. Well, it's not. It's in your actions. Now, your heart may be part of that, and some parts of the path, especially from a purely religious or purely philosophical point of view, may allow that. And that's why I draw the line the way I do. That's why I often fight for your right to say, no, this person isn't a Jedi. Because when you can say that, you can then hone yourself as what you see a Jedi as better, even if I don't see it that way. But when you have to accept one, you have to accept all. And we've just had too many people do too many terrible things for me to do that. That's just a reality. As a Jedi who swore an oath to justice and freedom, as part of my oath, as a pathworker, I just can't allow that to be part of how I view the world. So you've been here and it's been almost 40 minutes. My God, I think I've held you a bit too long. So let me part on this. This was an intense episode for me. I wanted to speak on something important. I wanted to voice all of the different things. I'm having conversations with a lot of different people. This isn't any one person. Anyone who made it this far and you think, this is my conversation. No, you're part of it probably. Certainly one of the dozens of people I've talked to this week. You're part of it, for sure. But it's not just one person. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of different messages, and it's a lot of people over the past couple months. I don't want to see this community die. If I did, I've had many opportunities to help close doors in various places. I want to see it thrive. I want to see a place where someone can come and they're a Jedi Pathworker and that calls to them and they find the beauty and the truth of that. But then I want to have that same place be where someone who's a religionist comes and they see the Force as all of the gods and all of the things and all of the religions, and they come and they find that. I want some people to have a place where they believe the Force is the undercurrent of all things, and there's a place for them. I want people to be able to show up and they believe the Jedi is about being a hero in the real world, and they have an opportunity for that. I want a place where people can show up, and no matter what it means to be Jedi, they have that opportunity. But we've all got massive chips on our shoulders. And I was told I'm really good at hitting stop brakes at times that make chips fly off people's shoulders, including my own. So this video is watching that chip fly off of my shoulder. And if you feel jostled and can't find the chip on yours, it's easily good. I did my job. That means I did something right today. And if instead all it did was make you angry and say, how dare he? Check and see how weighed down you are by your own chip on your shoulder. I know mine gets me sometimes. It gives me some back problems here and there. And if you're still mad after that, and you didn't laugh at that, well, I was mad, but then he said that, and yeah, he's right. We all have that ego thing creep up. If that's not the response you had, then the only thing I can say to you, from the depth of my heart, is that I hope that the Force guides and protects you.